Hello, it's Harry Brook here, Ag Fieldman for Flagstaff County. And today we're talking to Shelley Barkley, who is an insect technologist with Alberta Agriculture, Food and Rural Economic Development, AFRED.
No, it's not. Sorry, it's not
isn't?
food. It's forestry.
Oh, forestry, dang, sorry about that. Anyway, she's probably better known to you as the queen of the insect survey. Anyway, today we're going to talk about surveying for insects, their value, and which ones we do here in the province.
You're listening to the official podcast of Flagstaff County.
So, Shelley, could you tell me a little bit about the different surveys that we do at the moment?
Wow. Well, the program that I represent is responsible for 7 surveys in the province. And so the first 2 we'll talk about are ones that we put out pheromones and traps for, and do insect counts from the traps. So first one is diamondback moth. And that one is just, we want to know when they come to spend the summer in Alberta from Mexico, California. No, they don't live here year round. We're still a little too harsh for them. So they fly in on those big winds in the spring from the south.
Okay.
And so we put up these little traps, and we have about 40 different cooperators across the province, all the way from Warner, all the way up to Fort Vermilion. And they go out once a week and count the little moths that might be stuck to their traps. And of course, we're putting these out before canola is up, before just almost before stinkweed is showing any color. They go up sort of the first part of May, and they're up for 6 weeks. And so these dedicated volunteers go out and count the moths, and then can input their numbers into a web-based app that you can use your phone, and right from the field edge. And then the great thing about it is that through the magic of computers and Google Maps, the information that you put in right now in 10 minutes will be visible for people across the world to see, but especially for our producers in the province.
So real time.
Yeah, it's real time. And so this doesn't give you any predictive value for diamondback moth in your field. It just basically lets us know that they're here and how big in numbers they have arrived. Now, apparently, diamondback moth can cause an issue in baby canola. Did you ever run across that in your career, Harry?
No, never.
Diamondback moths. I think Scott Mears told me once in his 35-year career, they had diamondback moth eating baby canola as it was eating canola seedlings. And anyways,
or would it be like the 2-leaf?
It might have been the 2-leaf, but you know, that early stuff coming through the ground. But that has happened once in his 35 years. So our biggest concern, of course, is diamondback moth feeding on the pods later on in the summer, like August, right, Harry? Isn't it August? Yeah. And so there's a long time from May until we're worried about them in August. And a lot of things can happen to a diamondback moth population in that time. We could have cool weather. They're a favorite of ground beetles. Like, ground beetles love to eat them. And so just because we get a big flight in May doesn't mean in August that we're going to have to be spraying our canola. But you still have to watch your canola just to know what's going on out there.
You don't need any unpleasant surprises, do you?
No, right? And what is it? The best input you could put in your crop is your shadow.
I like that.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's diamondback moth, and we run that for 6 weeks. So from the 1st of May until about mid-June. And then those traps come down, and then I have about 125 cooperators across the province who do Bertha armyworm traps.
I was wondering, though, if you could tell me, when was the last time we had significant acreage treated due to diamondback? Because the one I remember way back when was in about 2005. I
Oh,
think there was significant acres that were having to be sprayed, but we've never had a big area sprayed since then, have we?
yeah, we had an
Yeah.
outbreak in 2016 or 17. I can't remember which one for sure, but it was that Vulcan area south to
Oh, okay.
Lethbridge.
Yeah.
We had some serious heat, and they were going through their life cycle in like 21 days, which they can
Wow.
do. And compounding the problem, and it's always a problem that I have seen, is when we get heat and we get those insects that love the heat that makes them successful, the crops are usually kind of crappy.
They're stressed,
And so now you have to make decisions of, do I spray and control it and protect whatever yield I have there, or do I just go to the lake? And so that year there was some, I remember, because we were riding around doing some scouting for some other stuff, and Scott was on his phone all the time talking to agronomists in that area, helping them make the decision of whether they'd have to pull a trigger or not. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And, the best thing to do is be out scouting your fields at the right times, right? It might be predictive to be out sweeping your canola at early flower and paying attention to the number of diamondback moth larvae that are in the sweep net. If there's a lot there, then you know that, now I need to kind of be paying attention in 3 weeks, right?
For the next go around,
Yeah, see if that next life cycle is causing problems in my potted canola. So, again, nothing can replace you being in the field and seeing your plants. Yeah.
So the next one you were saying would be Bertha's.
Yeah, we have about good old Bertha. We have a network of about 125 cooperators, and this is made up of farmers, people from Nutrien and Richardson, and it's made up of some of my favorite people in the world, Fieldman, and who else helps me out? Private agronomists, lots of private agronomists, and so basically we put up a green bucket trap in the field, or two, depending where you live. And again, the cooperators go out and they dump their bucket onto the tailgate of their truck, and they count the number of moths, and again, report it on the online map. And the same thing happens within 10 minutes. You can see your counts showing up on the map on the Alberta Insect webpage, and it helps us to understand when that population peaks. So when we should be out walking our canola, our faba beans, or our peas, because Bertha will eat all of them.
Omnivorous, aren't they?
Yes, they've even been reported to eat potatoes, and potato tops. So
I thought they were poisonous.
Yeah, I guess not to Bertha.
Oh, pity.
So this is it's our best subscribed for farmer buy-in, or for producer ag industry
buy-in,
buy-in. Yeah. And it's probably the one that saved farmers the most money, because they know that they're in an outbreak situation, or they need to be out in their fields. And it takes that guesswork out, that just because the neighbor is spraying for Bertha,
doesn't mean
maybe
you
I
should.
don't. It doesn't mean you should. It means I should be in the fields walking my fields.
Well, and that happened to me once too, where a friend of mine was concerned because his neighbor, less than a mile away, had probably had 50% of his canola crop destroyed by Bertha. And the funny thing was, they started from the middle of the field outwards, so we didn't notice until it was quite late. So my friend was very nervous and said, well, could you come out and check mine? So I checked his. I had a hard time finding Bertha's, even though it was 3/4 of a mile away. It's just so area specific.
Well, you know what it is. And we think, maybe I'm giving insects more credit than they deserve, but a female Bertha moth will seek out a place in the canola field where the canola is at the right stage, so that she ensures her progeny carries the genetics on. So I've been in fields, and I'm sure you've been in it. You walk the side of the field and you're scouting and you don't find anything. And then you walk into an oil lease road where there's maybe a little low spot and the canola is still a little flowering a little bit, but everything else is not, and they'll be there.
Yeah. It
right.
But it requires, once again, vigilance.
Yes. And visiting several places in the fields and several different topographies in the field and stuff. But this network works really well. Like, we were able to see the build up when we had those bad years in Midburn County and Two Hills County. We were able to watch them building and telling them, yeah, you guys, they're coming.
Get out there.
Actually, that was the one year we had a research project that was timed right to the insect population being there. So, because usually you get money usually you get money to do a research project on an insect, and then the insect population just like disappears. It's pest control in the world, actually.
Just throw money at it.
Just throw money at it. Yeah. Yeah. Find a researcher who's willing to do something, and then there's nothing there to study. So yeah, those are the two. They're all based in citizen science, and we can generate a lot of really good information for producers from those two. And then we start to talk about the ones where we actually do field visits. And let's just start at the beginning of the season, and we'll work our way through. So we do a survey for pea leaf weevil damage. For pea leaf weevil across the province. And this survey is done from the US border all the way up to the south side of the Peace River. And if I find them in the MD of Peace, then I actually go into Northern Lights and do a look there and see if they've spread that far. And basically with this one, what we do is I don't even walk in the fields anymore. I do all my survey for this one off the side of the road, off the side of the ditch.
Is that because they come in from the sides?
Yes. And so you'll get your most pressure, feeding pressure earliest on the outside edge. Because right now, pea leaf weevil is spending the winter in the long grass in the ditch. Under tree, groves of, and under a nice blanket of snow, which works like a great duvet cover. Yeah. And so when the temperatures are right, they will actually walk, if it's good enough, they'll walk into the field because they've been where there's been food, like around alfalfa plants. So we look at 50 plants in the field, so 5 stops of 10 plants, and we count all the feeding notches on the plants, and it's each set of nodes, and that's what we record. So if you're at 4 node, you count 4, whatever. And then, so we do that, and in most counties, we do 5 pea fields. Some of the bigger counties, like say Vulcan County, I might do 6 or 7. Especially where peas are more prolific and they're easier to find. And then all that data is rolled up at the end of the year, or in August or so, and sent to Saskatchewan, to Ag Canada. And they do our mapping for us as part of the Prairie Pest Monitoring Network. Okay. And they actually provide all our lures and trap supplies now. So that would be a good resource for folks to have bookmarked. And you can actually sign up for their weekly updates, sort of email alerts or updates. Okay. And in those, they give you insect development maps using temperature degree days and all that stuff. So we know what stage, say, grasshopper's in, or know what stage Bertha should be at, or whatever. So, that's a great resource for people to have, to get just a weekly email, Prairie Pest Monitoring Network. Okay. And I can send you those links. So yeah, they do all our mapping for us, and they are sort of the umbrella, and they make sure all 3 prairie provinces are doing the same protocol when we do our surveys. They are actually some of my entomology support when I have these wacko questions that pop into my head while I'm counting notches
that
on
come out.
peas.
Okay. The only thing about pea leaf weevil, though, is it's more of an after the fact, because there's not a lot you can do about it once you've seen them out there causing damage.
Exactly. So my forecast map, or my population map, that is going to be posted within the next, say, week on our webpage, tells you that, yes, this is where the hot spots are in the province. And you use that information as well as the information that you've seen in your field from 2021 to help you make decisions of whether you seed treat or not.
Right. Because that's the one thing. It's insecticide. You're wasting your time and your money, and you're probably doing more harm than good.
Right, because you're killing things like ground beetles that would eat the eggs of the pea leaf weevil.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem. You walk out in your pea field, you see some notching going on, and you go, oh my gosh, I got pea leaf weevil. I should spray. So by the time you go to town and you get the spray, you come home, fill the sprayer, and drive back out to the field. She's already started to lay eggs, right? She's already maybe laid 50 eggs. So here you go, right? So it's always, if it's bad this year, then you do things, you do your management tools next year. This is a next year insect that you deal with. Here's the good news story about pea leaf weevil that I have learned talking to researchers about pea leaf weevil. Dry conditions like we had in 2021 do not favor larval development in pea leaf weevil.
That is good news.
in the hot spots where we used to count like 30 and 35 notches on a set of leaves at Bow Island, we're now counting 2 or 3 because they've been in this dry cycle, and so the weevil populations have drastically gone down. And so to the case where a lot of farmers down there now are going, well, we're not going to seed treat. Now, once weather returns to sort of a more moist pattern, then there will be a resurgence. There always is. Yeah. But at this point, there's a lot of producers that I have talked to in the South that aren't seed treating again this year.
Okay.
So that's a good news story. Yeah. So from pea leaf weevil, we then roll into, and I should mention here that for the majority of our surveys, there's 1 or 2 surveys that the applied research associations don't do. But for the most part, the applied research associations play a hand in our surveys for us, and I'm very grateful for their support. So Battle River is one that we count on in Flagstaff and Painters to do a lot of the groundwork for us there. So yeah, we're eternally grateful to them for that kind of work they do for us. The next one we do is early flower canola sweep survey. So this is where you walk into the canola field right from the edge. You step into the canola first row and you sweep 25 sweeps into the crop, and you sweep it. And the whole time I'm sweeping it, I go, I hate canola. So that I make sure that I get a really good hard sweep through the canola. And it's hard, all right. It's hard, although I don't go into canola once it's potted, because that stuff is nasty. It'll sit you on your butt really fast. So we bag this stuff with the legal land locations and the GPS coordinates and all this information about the field. And here we sweep, we do this survey from the US border up to a line sort of Westlock is about as far north as we go with this survey, and Westlock Bar. So then we go back to the office and freeze these samples to kill everything. And then we pick through each sample and record what we find in each field. And in that, there's about 10 or 12 insects that we actually keep track of. Our target is cabbage seed pod weevil.
Right.
And the reason we do that is to find out how far north the population has expanded or if it's contracted, and, sort of the numbers and the hot spots in the province.
Right.
And it's south of Highway 1 again, but I
Are
have
you,
found it
are
as
you
high as
seeing it?
Brownfield.
Okay, so it's gone as far as Brownfield. That's about
Yeah,
as
and we
far north
found
as we found any?
Actually, we found it up around Edmonton, but
Okay.
in the last few years, that population again has really contracted back,
Mhm.
and I didn't find it even as far north as Ponoka this year. So
Okay.
again, this is another insect that its larva is not happy in dry weather.
Oh,
Doesn't do
good.
well. So, yeah. And I should say, and I should backtrack a little bit. If you have any producers who are interested in us evaluating their pea fields
Mhm.
for pea leaf weevil, I would welcome them to volunteer their fields, because we just come in and we don't even take anything from the field unless it's a rock that would look good in my yard. we don't take anything. We just count your peas, and I always believe that if you're giving me your field, then you should get back the results that we see from your field. So within about 2 weeks of finishing this survey, provided we don't have to roll again right into canola, I would send you the results from your fields. And
good.
and then you have my contact information, so that might help you with further questions down the road. You never know. Anyways, so we finished canola, and we process those samples, and again, that information is all wrapped up
Mhm.
and sent to Saskatoon for mapping. That the other insect data that we keep, so lygus bug populations, sometimes red turnip, flea beetle, all that stuff is kept in the data sheets. And should a researcher need some of this long-term data, we have it for them to use. So it's not like we're, it's not like we're just going out and gathering stuff just for the sake of gathering stuff.
There's a reason for it all.
There is a reason for it. And again, these sweeps are timed right that we could see populations of diamondback moth growing in those samples, right? And then we could just sort of do some extension or talk to some people about, we need to be watching because this could be brewing.
So with the flea beetles, like they seem to be a problem every year, at least somewhere in the province. And there's significant acres that are sprayed.
Yes.
Is there a way to, like, how do you, other than recording numbers or saying, well, this area got, 20% of the producers sprayed, how would you sort of find an early warning system with them? Would you use fall numbers?
No, because we have winter.
Exactly. Kills a lot of stuff off.
Right? Yeah, and things might not, like, now we won't say that about last fall because we had such a beautiful fall. Insects were able to bulk up and get whatever they needed to make sure they were well provisioned to go into winter. Spring could tell us a lot too. Like, we could have catastrophes weather-wise in the spring that would take up populations. But I think people need to be aware. And now I'm not so much sure about Flagstaff because I wasn't in canola fields there, but I can tell you canola fields in the south in early August had huge populations of flea beetles.
They like the heat, I take it.
Yes, they did. They did really well. Like there was, in some fields, it was just, if you didn't like bugs, it would make you crawl, your skin crawl. And so we have a huge overwintering population because this is the generation that we saw last fall that will be the ones that are feeding on our baby canola.
Right.
So I have been told by some of the agronomists in Vulcan County, for example, that their farmers are making sure that their seed packages are well covered for seed treatment for flea beetles. So it's there. But as a predictor, if there was a way, Harry, I think that to predict these things, we'd be doing it,
Yeah, right.
right?
But weather throws too much of a wrench into it to make it
Yeah.
predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the one way that we have of monitoring for flea beetles in the spring is yellow sticky cards, and they are the worst things in the world to have to deal with, and so they're just not, and they don't tell you anything. They tell you the population's there. Well, if you're scouting your canola, you're gonna know the population.
You'll see them already.
Doesn't need
right?
it. You don't.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't need a yellow sticky card to tell you that they're there. So yeah. So that's one that is just one of those things that's something we have to deal with. If we're growing a mustard, we have to deal with this.
Yeah.
Even my alyssum in my garden, damn things. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever survey any, I guess there's the wheat midge?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah. So wheat midge survey, we survey, we actually, this is one where we take something from the fields. We take about 3/4 of a liter of soil. We take 17 1-inch cores from the field in a kind of horseshoe pattern. And we do that again. And this is another big survey. We do it from the US border all the way up to Fort Vermilion. And the Applied Research Associations are key in getting those, especially the Fort Vermilion one, because that's a long way from Brooks.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, we have cooperators that do this. So even some of the fieldmen actually take samples for me, and then they come to Brooks, and this made my father so proud. I would spend a month washing dirt. He couldn't, I sent you to college and all you can do is wash dirt. But anyways, we wash the soil through a series of sieves and float off, or all the floaties that come off. We look through the microscope at that refuse that's left, and we pick out the wheat midge cocoons.
Okay.
And then and people use fancy words. They say dissect these cocoons. Well, basically what I do is I take 2 really long doll making pins that I got at the dollar store, and I put them in and I pull this thing apart to see if there is a parasitoid inside the macroglannes. And yeah, so last year I think I washed 292 soil samples.
That's a lot of
most years. When we have farmers volunteer their fields, I didn't have a lot of volunteering last year. So when farmers volunteer fields for me to come and survey for them, I have washed up to 340. That's a lot of dirt. Yeah, it does. Then it would take me about 6 weeks. I can do about 100. I do about 100 a week.
That's not bad.
No, that's not bad. But then I go to my masseuse weekly for the next little while. Anyways, this is a great survey because we're going into the fields after combining. We're, most of the time most of the time in the fall, we have nice fall days, and it's a glorious survey to do. And that information is all again sent to Saskatoon. And they generate the map, which is actually up on our webpage right now. And you can see that there is a hot spot for wheat midge, sort of Camrose Flagstaff.
Yes.
But otherwise, there is no very little wheat midge pressure in the province, possibly because when they were out flying and the wheat was in, and when the wheat was flowering, it was the heat dome. And I think those poor little midges kind of just got fried.
Dried up and blew away.
Yeah.
Because it was exceedingly dry.
It was exceedingly dry. And that
area did get more moisture than a lot of the surrounding areas, which is kind of different.
And that area was already under the watch from the year before. So it's not surprising, right? But Viking, Viking last year, a producer there had the most midge, won the prize. I actually sent him a prize because he had the most number of midge in his field. And
The booby prize.
yeah, well, it was one of my calendars, so I don't know if it was such a booby prize.
Well, I know it's not something you want to win.
No, it wasn't something we wanted to win, but I wasn't surprised that it was there and the fact that that's in the region it showed up. But what I was surprised was anything survived through that terrible heat. But there you go. So, the interesting thing about wheat midge cocoons, though, is that they can spend 2 years in the ground.
So they can skip a year.
They can skip a year. So should we get May and June moisture?
Mm-hmm.
We could have some midge issues.
Problem.
So I have some wheat midge pheromone traps that some agronomists kind of run, so that what this does is it draws the male midge to the trap. Male wheat midge come out of the ground about 4 days before the females, and they kind of go over to the canola and they hang out. So often the canola will be seeded in the field that was wheat the year before, right? So they'll hang out in the canola and they'll nectar and wait for the girls to show up. And then they'll fly into the wheat, or the females will fly into the wheat and lay their eggs. So the idea of the traps is it gives you that early warning. 3 days I have to go out and be in that field looking for midge because I had a lot here. And so that's basically all it's doing. Although I know Boyd Morey is doing some work trying to tie midge catches on the traps and do some trap improvements and stuff. So there'll be some interesting work coming out of his lab with wheat midge.
I'm talking to him later.
Oh, there you go. Well, he's one of my favorite entomologists. I have lots, but he's one of my favorites because Boyd has gotten me through some tough times with not having a boss. So sometimes I say I'm working for Boyd, but anyways, he gives me some direction in some of these different surveys that I undertake. He works through it with me. So it's really great to have that kind of collaboration with us in the U of A. Yeah, really important actually. Yeah. The last survey that I'm totally responsible for is the wheat stem softfly survey.
Right.
This one is only done sort of south of Highway 9, because that's sort of the wheat stem softfly range. And although I have in years past counted softfly damage the southeast corner of Camrose County, we've counted it in not Beaver. So Highway 36, just about when you go into Beaver County. What is it? That's your county, isn't it? Flagstaff, or is it Peters?
Yeah, let's see, Highway 36.
36.
It would be the Flagstaff up into Beaver, yeah. So it would be ours.
Okay. Anyways, there was a field there with softfly cutting, and a sharp-eyed agronomist pointed it out. And so we actually 1 year have surveyed in both Flagstaff and Painters for wheat stem softfly. That population, because you guys tend to get a little bit of rain now and then, occasionally during the growing season, you're not known for wheat stem softfly populations causing you grief. Anybody who has seen a field damaged by softfly, it makes you just want to cry because the wheat all lays down.
Yeah.
It cuts the wheat off, a couple inches off the ground, and a big wind comes and your whole crop is laying on the ground. And so it becomes next to impossible to pick up without probably a swather. And there's areas in the province where we're looking at 60% cutting.
That's huge.
It's huge. It's huge. And it's feeding in the stem during the growing season does affect kernel size and kernel weight. So here's the bad news story from the heat and drought is softfly numbers are growing. Populations are on the increase, and I would expect that maybe in 2022 we have to look at some fields further north than we normally do. Just do a quick look, see if there's anything there. Yeah. So
that's a busy summer.
Yeah. last year I went 3/4 of the way around the earth. Just for work. Just for work.
19,000 kilometers.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
a lot of windshield time.
It is, but it's fabulous. I have talking books and it's fabulous. So the last survey that we should talk about is the grasshopper survey.
Yes.
And you can probably talk about how you do it. I have to give credit to the Fieldmen, and I hope they don't think that I'm just, gushing all over them all the time. But this year we had 2,200 lines of data. So that means 2,200 spots were counted for grasshopper survey in this province.
That's a lot.
Every county reported. And we could not, Alberta Agriculture in no way, shape, or form could pull off this survey. Grasshopper survey has been done in this province forever. It is probably the longest running survey in Western Canada. And it's all because the Fieldmen feel it's really important, and they help me, and they do it. And I'm just so grateful for their support in this
On behalf of the Fieldmen, thank you.
And I have to say that map went up yesterday. And so people can take a look and see about, grasshopper populations. And I would expect that you might be getting a copy of that map in your mailboxes.
Okay. Can you tell
soon.
us where everybody could go for all these maps?
Yeah, it's the Alberta Insect Pest Monitoring Network, and it's on the Alberta Agriculture, Forestry, and Rural Economic Development. And what I'll do, Harry, is I'll send you the link, because it's easier to link to it than try and Google it. But if you wanted to see the grasshopper map, if you just Googled grasshopper map Alberta, it would come up. So that, and then you could backtrack and bookmark that page, because that's where all the information that we've talked about today is posted and where it lives. So
they're very useful tools for the producers, agronomists, basically the entire industry. It's as you say, it's not a replacement for being in the field and checking, but it's a great little early warning system for a lot of the common pests we have. Yeah.
And, on there too, there's an email contact. It's called Bugs Are Us at gov.ab.ca. And, if you find stuff in the field that is not normal, then we would ask that you reach out to us and let us know. And we would come and collect it or do whatever we have to do, because there's a lot of people walking farmers' fields, doing scouting and stuff like that. And that's how we're going to know when pollen beetle shows up in canola or something in wheat that we've never seen before.
Invasive species coming to the next wave.
And the next thing we have to be concerned about. So it's important to be able to harness some of these eyes. And often people who are part of my network then know that they have the option to reach out to me, and we'll try to do whatever we can, whether we involve the plant health lab, whether I send it to Ottawa for ID, we will get answers for people, because then I want to know too.
Well, I know some of the oddball things that have come through. There's the salt marsh caterpillars that are in canola sometimes. Once you've seen them once, then you can identify them. But it's the oddballs, the toe biters that show up.
Well, and sometimes, because canola is so valuable, if an insect walks into a canola field right now, everybody's pushing panic buttons, and sometimes it's just a forest ant caterpillar coming out of the aspen tree around the canola field. But I get it. There's a lot of money sitting in that field, so you want to know what's there.
Definitely. Well, thanks. Is there any final parting words of wisdom you want to give us?
Well, anybody who wants to volunteer pea fields, anybody who's interested in signing up to run a Bertha armyworm trap, I I will set you up with what you need for sure. Reach out. I'll send you the protocols. Can you see if you want to even try it? It's important to realize, though, that just because you put a Bertha armyworm trap up in your field, it's not necessarily reporting what's going on in your field.
Right.
It may say that there's lots of Bertha armyworm around, but you don't find any in your field that the trap's in. But, a trap half a mile down the road, or a field a mile down the road, or even within the same township could be the field that they're in. So yeah, a trap doesn't necessarily mean that that's reporting on what's in your field. It's reporting on what's in the area.
Yeah, so it's more general than specific. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and until next time.